really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
That's why it's really important to have a plan. Have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
We are live. Welcome, you filthy, filthy degenerates, to another wonderful episode of the Degen Roundtable. I will be your host tonight because, Agent J hasn't been on a Sunday episode for quite a while. As most of you know in our Telegram chat, I have been on a move to the new property, so that had to take the majority of my time. But I've been back on streaming. I believe I was on the last Whiskey Wednesday, and then I've been streaming throughout the week. Which those, if you guys have missed my TA, my streams, my emergency streams have been exclusive to our Telegram channel only. So if you're missing the TA from your guy Agent J, then get into our Telegram so you get the juice before everybody else. But before we get everything started, once again, thank you guys for joining us. For those of you folks joining us live, thank you for joining us now. Glad to be here. Glad to be back with the team. Glad to be back with the community. And excited because the market is freaking heating up. At least I think so, right? And we're gonna go over. We got somewhat of a bear sandwich. We got one bearish piece of news to go over today, sandwiched in between two very bullish pieces of news to share with you folks. But before we get to any of that, welcome to my lovely and handsome co-host and panelist, Brendan. How you doing, my man?
Handsome. Wow, that was so nice of you. I'm doing great. It's really glad to be here. Missed the Wednesday show, which is a really cool stream. Really enjoyed watching that. You guys killed it. And honestly, I just enjoy streaming. I'm just like you said, kind of ultra bullish. And the more things that happen in this market, I'm getting more and more bullish. And I'm not doing it in an area where I'm just caught up in the excitement. I've lived through a full cycle. I've lived through the ups and the downs. And I'm not letting my emotions, get the best of me this cycle. But man, there is some exciting potential coming up over the next, 6 months to 12 months, depending on how far this market goes, how long it goes, maybe even 16 months. Who knows where we go. But really excited. I'm very excited about the articles we're going to be covering tonight. And I just want to give a shout out to our crew and also to everyone watching us. Thank you all for tuning in, and super excited for the show. Zenith, buddy. Our book club extraordinaire, our leader in so many places. What's going on, man?
Not much. We are just staying busy as all hell over here. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes for everybody on top of all the personal life stuff as well. But yeah, like you guys talked about earlier, we had an excellent Whiskey Wednesday this last week. We had Ali of Pulse Wars, the founder. He stayed up late until 2 a.m. to hang out with us. That was his time anyways. And then, yeah, the week before that, I think we had Agent J hopping on to hang out with Crypto Coffee, and we ran through the Pulse Shade meme coin tier list. That was a good time. So we've been having an absolute blast over here and continuing to try to deliver as much value as we possibly can. But that's what I got going on. Glad to be back at it, and I know we got a lot to talk about tonight.
Zenith, I feel like you've been on like 4 shows a week, like every week, you, Nate, and Will, and holding it down.
Hey, it's what we do. And then also, I can't believe I forgot this, but yeah, last Whiskey Wednesday, shout out to Crispy Man and then Professor STP as well. We had a lot of people joining us. And then even Farmer J, who decided to try his hat on for streaming this week. And he hopped on Book Club on Friday for his second stream live. So it's only going to get more exciting from here. I'll say that much.
100%. Shout out to Farmer J. Yeah, he really, as soon as he went out, he got himself a mic and a camera and all that and just hopped right on. So, congrats on you for putting yourself out there, bro.
Yeah, man. When I saw Farmer J on Book Club, I was like, this guy is exactly how I expected him to be.
Had you never seen Farmer J before?
No, that is the first time
Oh,
I've well, not in person, but like on stream, right? All of my interactions with Farmer Jay have been just strictly through Telegram, man. But I've heard stories from Will, so it was nice finally putting a face to the name and the legend. So, Nate, how about you, brother? What you been up to, man?
Oh, I had kind of a day off yesterday because, as Zenith has been saying, we've been doing a lot of streaming, a lot of background work and all that. And I was like, you know what? All right, this is gonna be my day off. And I mean, I literally did overtime by working. And as soon as I got home, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna I'm gonna chill. So yep, that's what I've been doing. I've been just kind of chilling. I did unfortunately get redeemed on Earn Protocol, which is sad. But I saw it coming. Unfortunately, I didn't have any more dry capital to place in there, and I went from like the ninth page all the way down to the third page, and I was like, oh, this is going so fast. I'm gonna get hit.
It happened fast, bro.
I was at 400 ICR too, so well, a little bit under that, but I mean close to it. So it's like, yeah, what's happening on Earn?
I went from over 400 ICR, I think, down to like 320 pretty quick.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, you closed yours out, so good on you. But
No, I still have my Earn open.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, but when you said you got redeemed against, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pay some more back. So I had some dry powders on the sideline, so I just put a little in there just to keep me safe.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So like some people will sit there and they'll be like, "Oh no, I got redeemed against. I am very sad, and screw this. I'm not gonna do this anymore." No, I was just like, well, I kind of saw it coming. I lost a lot of Pulse X, unfortunately for me. So I was just simply, I mean, it's a dippity dip right now. It's a good time to buy back. And I got all my Pulse X back out. So I have a large amount of Pulse X, and I went and I threw that into the farms to farm Inc. So now I'm just continuing on, brothers.
Yeah, man. See, here's the thing. When it comes to leverage plays, even we've spoken about Earn, we've spoken about liquid loans because they're kind of like the pair of leverage platforms that exist on Pulse Chain. But even places like Earn and liquid loans that are fairly safe when it comes to making leverage plays, right? You still have to pay attention because even somebody like Nate, who had a fairly high collateral ratio, right, up into 400s, things can move, like money can move that fast, and then you could get redeemed against that fast. So it's always a safe play to have some capital sitting on the side so that you can make moves just in case something like that happens, right? And then I wish I would have known this earlier, but I would have made a recommendation to Nate, like if you didn't have any capital on the side and you wanted to not get redeemed against, like I would have been like, look, if you have some Pulse Chain sitting on the side, maybe turn that into Pulse X and then add that to your vault just so that you can increase that collateral ratio, right? Because like you're gonna get it back regardless, and like sure you're gonna lose some of your Pulse Chain, but you get more Pulse X, which is like it's a win-win, and we like both things. So. But yeah, man, just keep an eye on those things, guys, because even the safest environments still introduce some risk. Because remember, even the safest place in crypto, this is still degen land. So, speaking of degenerates, looks like we got a fucking super chat from Mr. Boogie. Just with the fire emojis, man. Hey, Boogie, if you're gonna send a super chat, bro, send like a question or something so we can give some value to you, bro. But
¿Qué es esto?
¿Qué es esto, man? But yes, our favorite masked luchador. When are you making your debut, Boogie? Let us know, bro. But yeah, before we move on, let's actually go ahead and say hi to the rest of the chat. We got Vets and Crypto as our first member here of the DJ Roundtable. Bang bang. Hey, Vets, you got to be careful, man. Even gun sounds might get you canceled now. Hexken Hill, how you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Centurion, always in the chat, always seeing you around, brother. So good to see you as always. Mr. Will Stevenson couldn't make it to today's show. Very far and few in between where Will misses a show, but he's busy. He's on the road. So everybody make sure to send Will a message. Wish him safe travels because he's got quite a bit of states to get to over the next few days. So safe travels out there, brother. Tam, as always, my dear, good to see you in the chat as well. Moonpill it says, know that it's all going to zero. Said no Moon Gang member. That is correct, sir. That is correct. Oh, we do have those people who are former Moon Gang members who they got the haters. They might say it's all going to zero. And then we got a few more people rolling in. Luna C Point, my dear, good to see you. And then finally, Mr. Frank. What is that? Polanchik.
I think it's
Frank Polanchik.
Frank Polanchik.
He runs one of the great Telegram chats for very high level crypto.
Wonderful.
Definitely good to see you, Frank.
Maker's Mark. I believe Maker's Mark is a whiskey brand, correct?
It is. It's a pretty good one too.
It's not Jameson though.
Yeah. This guy with his Jameson. Senor Frank Polanchik. Might you join us during one of our whiskey Wednesdays, and you could tell us about your favorite whiskey Maker's Mark. But all right, before we get to all the serious stuff, all the TA and all that jazz,
I smell me.
you guys know that when I'm hosting, I always like to go through the memes, to go through the Twitter X. Sorry, Elon X. There's one in particular that I wanted to share with you guys today before we get to the memes. This is from our friend of the channel, Mr. Matty Allen. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. This was on his X page. He just posted this recently, a few hours ago. And I thought I'd share this with the chat, share this with the gang, and get their thoughts on it. Because let me see. Oh, you guys can see the tweet. Let me know. All right, so this is the one that I am talking about. He posted, you are meeting your 18-year-old self, and you are allowed 3 words. What do you say? And I say to Agent J, way back in Jersey City, just starting high school. Oh no, actually, this was about to graduate high school. I would say to Agent J, buy every Bitcoin. And the reason why I say that is because I turned 18 August of 2008. Do you guys know when the very first Bitcoin was mined?
February. No, it was January.
It was 2009.
2009.
January 2009. So I would have told myself at 18, motherfucker, you better buy all the Bitcoin. 3 words, buy every Bitcoin. So that's what I would have told my 18-year-old self. How about you guys? Brendan, Nate, Z, what would you have told your 18-year-old self? 3 words. 3 words.
I saw this tweet. Wait, no, that's not what I would have said. No, but I saw this tweet, and it was an interesting one because, when I was 18, crypto wasn't around yet, and markets, there were probably some big ones coming on up. But honestly, I would probably give myself a little bit different advice because 18, I wasn't ready to handle a large amount of money. I wasn't mentally or physically ready for that. So probably I would say, this is only 2 words, but stay humble, or work to be humble. That's 4 words. Fuck, can't do. I use 3 words. But just some life advice, something basic like that.
Gotcha. I mean, staying humble is always good, right? Especially at that age when every single 18-year-old, you're at that age. Most of you fuckers are arrogant as shit, right? You think you know everything. You think the world revolves around you, you narcissistic little brats. So yeah, stay humble for sure. How about you, Nate?
I just would I would say Bitcoin, Rolo, learn.
That's good. Just keywords. You didn't even have to put it in a sentence. Learn, Rolo, Bitcoin. Oh,
if you were to think about it, right? If you went back in time and you thought about that, and you're like specifically go buy Bitcoin, right? And you do that to yourself, that's gonna change everything so much. However, if you know yourself, if I were to say to myself, leave behind some sort of note or something just that has those keywords in it, I would look at those and be like, what the hell is this? And then I'd start searching for it,
Bro, so Rolo, I would argue that one of the perfect testing grounds for the red pill is if you're in high school and you're just starting, bro, because you have no other responsibilities outside of very little responsibilities outside of yourself. So you literally could take all of the time that you're not spending learning while you're in school, if you're not in sports or you're not engaged in anything else outside of high school, bro, learning game as a young man, bro, that's the perfect testing ground, bro. So for sure, good one there, Nate. How about you, Z?
Oh gosh, I mean, the we're all saying like go buy Bitcoin back when we're around this age, because I mean, this has become something that's actually life changing. So I mean, yeah, buy Bitcoin, hold, but at the same time, I think along a similar vein of if you know about Michael Sartain, I think one of the things he talks about is that if you're a person who is given just tons of attention for doing absolutely nothing other than just being attractive, your chances are you're going to be an insufferable person because you literally do whatever you want and you only win. So it's like, yeah, you can go back and tell yourself buy Bitcoin at 18 years old. But then I was thinking about it as like, God, if I just bought Bitcoin and just held because some version of me from the future told me to do that, I would probably be insufferable because I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm making more money than like anyone around me could ever like fathom. So yeah,
You know,
buy Bitcoin.
man, that's something I was thinking about as soon as you brought this up, Jay. I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And that's the reason why I said Rolo, because with where I was at when I was 18, that would have been that learning that side of things would have been immense for me to learn, because otherwise, if I just bought Bitcoin at that time when I was 18, which by the way, I was 18 in 2011, so Bitcoin was running at this time. But even if I did buy at that time and I got super rich, with my path, like with where I was, I would have would not have been a good person, you know. And there's a lot that I had to learn.
So totally agree with you guys, but here's the caveat, right? This is you from the future. So with any luck, if I at 18 saw myself at 18 from the future, and at 18 I was obese, so I was like, bro, if I saw myself in the future, I'm like, oh shit, he's kind of fit now. He must have done something right. So I would be more inclined to listen to my future self. That's an assumption, obviously, right? But it's, the caveat. But Z brought up a good point. Buy Bitcoin, hold. Right, because if you add that little if you add that caveat there at the end, you're probably less likely to sell, right? But yeah, that's a good advice there. Let's see what did anybody in the chat chime in. I saw Boogie put something
did.
buy Bitcoin 2009. Smart.
Boogie might have a few more years on us, which is why he had to add the 2009 thing. Because maybe tell him like somebody back pre-Bitcoin, hey, there's going to be this thing, you should buy it. It's like, thanks, that's useless. It doesn't exist.
That's why I couldn't tell myself it. I turned 18 in 2002, bro. Like,
True chains. But here's the thing:
from 2002 to 2009, I had to work on myself, and then maybe I would have been ready to buy Bitcoin.
Well, I was thinking, bro, because it's like, if Brendan from the future told you that at 2002, you'd been like, what the hell is Bitcoin? That shit doesn't exist. But then it comes out and you're like, oh, like you would remember it, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's what future being meant. So
yeah, but Bitcoin was so small in 2009 that if I wasn't in the scene, I would have missed it, right? I didn't hear about Bitcoin first time, I think, to 2011. And one of my friends told me to buy it, and I was like, bro, you can't create money from a computer. Fuck you. It makes no sense.
And now everybody's creating money from their computers.
Man,
I was gonna say, so if you are part of the gang where you at 18 years old is pre-Bitcoin, there's a possibility that you tweet out or mention some kind of Bitcoin before it exists, and then the government gets word of this, and then everyone starts to think that you are Satoshi. And they start coming after you. The CIA is about to try to give you a journalism award, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. About to go to prison with this man that didn't hang himself.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. With that, let's go ahead and transition over to a few memes that I found. So this first meme that I'm going to share with you guys, this shit was hilarious because you could this is like I imagined Vanguard saying this. Give me 1 second. Let me share my screen. But this is people in general who don't know anything about the crypto space. This is how like they tell you. This is like their first reaction when you tell them about crypto. But then, all right, let me see. Yep, there we go.
That's my altcoin right there.
All right. Everybody in traditional finance, aka Vanguard, says, I don't invest in Bitcoin because it's risky. And then you have all of us degenerates out here. I mean, what would be the equivalent of that looks like a female lion that lady is carrying.
That is a cougar or a mountain lion or something. Either way, that is a very unhappy kitty with some murder mittens.
So it seems pretty degenerate, right? What would be the equivalent in the crypto space? Because that thing could definitely kill you.
Freaking
Luna?
Solana. Anything you try and do on Solana.
Oh my God. I mean, hey man, still made a lot of money on Solana, bro. So
I will not lie. Yes, I have gotten lucky a couple of times. Degenerate 1 minute trading.
All right, next one. Next one is what happens to your favorite altcoins when Bitcoin takes a dip. Just off a cliff. Bitcoin goes down.
Big facts right there.
Big facts, man. Big facts. But if you've been in the market long enough, you know this is exactly what happens when Bitcoin takes a hit, right? Bitcoin might go 3 to 5% down, and altcoins go 15, 20, 30% down. But God,
you know what does it for me here with this?
Huh?
What does it for me is like you see like minus 11%, minus 15, and then it just disappears.
Yep.
It just drops so fast.
Down 99% 3 times.
That's what happens though, is that like Bitcoin will go down like 5% over the course of like 3-4 weeks. And you're like, oh, it's not bad. We're just chopping sideways and like slightly down. And then you go look at the other charts and it's just, Yeah,
man. I was going to say that we have a lot of hexagons here and pulsicons, but we're down about 70% from the highs.
Yeah, you know what's crazy though?
By me.
You know what's crazy though? Like Bitcoin, we're talking about being in like an alt season, right? Bitcoin dominance has still been very high. We're still like 50. I haven't looked like that. I already said we're still like 55%, 56%. I think a couple days ago. Like this is crazy that alts have popped so much with Bitcoin dominance being so high.
Yeah. I think we don't get stiff resistance for dominance until like we're at like 60%, which after like post halving, I could see it happening. So who knows, but we'll see. Twinkie says in the chat, I believe this is Twinkie's response to the Pulse chain ecosystem being down 70%. That is correct. It is indeed prime buying opportunities. A lot of people were crying when Pulse X hit sack rate, and they were like, oh my God, I wish I would have bought more Pulse X down at like below 4 zeros and a 5. Well, here's your opportunity, man. You know, a lot of the folks in the chat were talking about once Pulse X got to like around 4 zeros and a 4, they were bridging money into the ecosystem, buying more. And now most of them are either just holding a liquid, or a lot of folks are farming incentive over on V1. So that's how you win as a holder of the token, because don't fade incentive, man. I personally am actually not selling my incentive. Right, I'm yielding incentive, and I am rehypothecating the incentive. I hate that word. Rehypothecating the incentive back into the Pulse chain incentive pools, right? Because it has way higher APRs. So that's what I've been doing with my incentive token. I ain't selling incentive token until that thing goes like to at least like $15, $20, bro. What are you guys doing with your incentive?
Well, I was going to buy a scratcher when it was at $2. I decided to buy a fair amount more than a scratcher because I was like, you know what? I don't want to be left without any Richard Hart token. And I wish I bought more. So I'm doing the same thing as you. I pulled my money out of liquid loans. I closed out my vault, and I'm in the Ink wrapped Pulse farm. I'm in the Pulse X farm. And, about every 4 or 5 days, I'm taking my Ink out and I'm rehypothecating it back into one of those pools. And I'm thinking about how I can add more to these pools because I want to stack Ink. And I think that that's a really easy way to do it because, again, like I'm not worried about impermanent loss. If I'm getting Pulse X or Pulse or Ink, like I don't care which of those three I end up with more. Now, I'm not going to be degenerate and farm with like EX, or I'm even a little like worried of like, I don't know, just personally, like I'm not in the Hex farms. Like I think it's just Hex a little volatile compared to Pulse X. And so I own, a fair amount of Pulse. I mean, a fair amount of Hex. Don't get me wrong, fair amount. But I'm just not using my Hex to farm. So I will potentially look at some single side staking at some point if that becomes available. I think on some protocols it is, but I'm not going to say any of those protocols because I don't know how good they are or how safe they are just yet. But yeah, I think farming Ink right now seems to be the play because Ink seems to run before everything else, and it's below $5 right now. I said if it got below $5, I'd buy more, so I've not done that, but it is in my possible plays in the next few weeks. But I'm kind of just being patient, see how things play out. And now that I can farm it, it's like I don't feel that as much of a need to buy more, right? Because I can just earn it.
How about you, Nate?
Yeah,
What you doing with your
that's the same
incentive?
thing that I'm doing actually, because I'm in the incentive farms as well. But I'm also in. I've got all of my Hex farming incentive right now as well. And thanks to me getting redeemed, here's the good side of it, right? And I now moved all of my Pulse X over to farm incentive. So let's just say I have a fair amount of incentive that I'm literally farming out every single day now. And again, yes, just as Jay said, rehypothecating. It's a good little money printer right now. And I'll tell you what, I think Ink, is going to start surprising people.
I think it's already opened eyes. I mean, Jay's eyes have been opened.
I was like, bro, if you haven't been surprised by, and I've been pretty open with this, I faded incentive hard in the beginning, bro.
Me too.
I was like, oh, perma inflationary token, perma dump token, the same way that it always plays out, and I was proven wrong. So I'm like, look, in the face of overwhelming evidence, I am willing and able to change my fucking opinion, right? I would rather have the right answer to be right. Okay, so yeah, definitely opened my eyes to incentive. How about you, Z? What you been doing? Are you farming incentive too, brother, or no?
I am now, although honestly, everything you just said there was exactly how I felt about incentive token for a long time, which is I thought that this was the permanent inflation token. It only goes down. But when we did hit, I think it got down to like, what, 30, 40 cents. And then since then, we've gone all the way up to like $6 or something. I think right now we're sitting at around, I have Pulse X.
It's hit over $10 at one point.
Yeah, it did. But the thing for me is like, I think that obviously I'm not farming with my entire bags or even half my bags, to be honest, at that point. It's like I've recently gotten into incentive token, and I think that stacking more of it makes more sense. And I mean, you can tell me that I'm hopping on the meme coin bandwagon and that I believe that incentive token is the meme coin. But at the same time, I've started to realize like this is maybe the last aspect of the Richard Heart ecosystem that I just hadn't touched yet. So there's probably some value in doing so. And with the possibility of like additional projects coming up, like a Richard Heart wallet or something like that, and a possible sack phase, and then this crazy idea that if you sacrifice an incentive token, you get double points or something. It's like that kind of makes sense to me. But I mean, also at the same time, like these tokens have value because we give them value and people are willing to trade for them. And at this point, it seems that the market's speaking and saying that, yeah, incentive token is here to stay. And there's more fundamentals behind this other than just it gets printed forever. And then also one thing that's important to remember about incentive token is that the inflation on incentive token is going to drop drastically as time goes on. Like the first few years here.
Yeah. Is it every year?
Every year. Every year.
Every year.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just like loan token where it has like a happening.
Yeah. So you go for it, Nate.
Well, little public service announcement for everybody. You know me, when it comes to the altcoins right now, the kind of like meme coins in the Richard Heart ecosystem, I basically have not missed yet. I've been pretty good at picking these coins that are just going up and or shoot up really high. I definitely missed on Ink though, because I completely, just like all you guys, right? I was like, nah, this is forever going down, but I completely missed that one.
Yeah, I have one thing.
If you look at it, go for it.
No, go ahead, Zenith. I'll go after you.
I was gonna say, are we technically late with our thinking a little bit? Yeah, but that's also because people like us had to recalibrate and understand what's going on. However, at the same time, if you do look at how this has progressed, I believe that incentive tokens started off with like an all-time high of close to $100. Like the very first like 2, 3, 4, 5 days of Pulse Chain release.
So much.
$80.
Exactly.
When we were Hex fools, holy moly, we were making a lot of money.
Correct. It shot so hard. And then ever since then, I think everyone knew like, yeah, okay, we had our initial pump. Now we crash before the actual real pump comes. And incentive token was the one that people were looking at. It's like, all right, this pumped way too hard, way too fast. So this is going to go down for a long time. So now that we've hit that market bottom, when you also look at it compared to the emission schedule, it's like there's a lot of incentive token that has already been put out now. So even if you didn't buy it or have been farming up to this point, it means that this is now a decent time to get in my opinion. Again, this is not financial advice, but just looking at the chart, it's like there's already a large supply of incentive that's been put out. It looks like it's bottomed. So yes, we're only going to be receiving less and less incentive token in the future. However, at the same time, we've now passed that point where it looks like price is only going to be going up theoretically. I mean, assuming normal volatility as well. But for the rest of the cycle, we're only going to be going up with the rest of the coins. And this seems like a reasonable time to start building up more and more of that position incentive token, and also start farming it more as well. Once you start having that, now you have the incentive token, and that can be a tool and an asset to collect more of it.
One thing I'd like to add on is that some people, this happens with a lot of meme coins, right? Is you think unless you got in like right away at the beginning, you missed out. However, I've noticed that that's not actually true. Still being early means that it kind of like it'll start going up, and then it hits resistance points. And as long as you can realize kind of that first or second resistance point and then buy in there, that's when you still win. You're still early enough. So just keep that in mind, guys, when you're buying these coins.
I don't want people to forget, Richard Hart also tweeted about Ink, calling it the best meme coin on Pulse Chain. Right, so he's kind of hopping on the Ink train a little bit, but yeah, I wish I bought more when I did. But at least when I bought, it was now looking very cheap. So that's a thing, right? Even at that point, I didn't know if I was buying when it was cheap, but based on what I was looking at, I was pretty confident in holding a little bit of this token that was attached to the Richard Hart ecosystem just to have a piece of it. Yeah, I'm not going to say that I had all of this knowledge. I just thought it was smart to have a piece.
Yeah, and Nate made a very good point there, right? If you're buying below the inflection point, right before it goes parabolic, you're getting in at a good price, right? And I don't know if you guys have been looking at the chart recently. We have not hit an inflection point on parabolic yet in the Richard Hart ecosystem. All right, we're now in in like a bigger wave 2, which wave 3 is yet to come. So yeah, hang on tight. So if you're buying anything right now, like you're buying Pulse X at around 4 zeros and a 3, you're buying Pulse Chain below SAC price again, you're buying incentive at a 50% discount because it's close to $4 right now. It had a high of $10 not so far back. Hex is hovering around still that 1 cent area. So these are the prices that if you buy in now, we haven't hit that inflection point yet. So the prices that you're getting in, you didn't get in at the absolute bottom. Sorry, right? Like, don't cry about it. Like, what are you going to do about it now? And if you're a believer in the system, these are the prices where you want to be getting in, because otherwise the train will leave you behind come like fall, like around fall, bro. Like if you still have like 90% of your capital sitting in the side around the fall time, you're like, I'm not going to say you're not going to make any gains, but like multiple X's have left you behind.
It's funny that people have so many stables on the sideline. It's crazy how much money hasn't come into the market yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're at 70K Bitcoin. Doesn't 70K Bitcoin starting to feel like a pretty safe level, like in the high 60s? It just seems like, oh, Bitcoin's in the high 60s. Oh, okay. It's nothing special. It's literally the all-time high from the last cycle, and it seems like nothing. That's really interesting. And from a mental standpoint, you have to understand what that means, and you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, incentive is like the highest performing asset across the Richard Hart ecosystem. Like, come on, guys. All right. It's outperformed Pulse X. Like, it's incentive, Pulse X, Pulse Chain, and then Hex. Right. So it's like right now, the meme coin is doing the most X's, which is like, oh, obviously the meme coin is going to do the most X's, right?
Well, that's what all the meme coins are doing right now, the most X's. It's just a weird season right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, don't fade incentive, man. With that being said, let's go ahead and we had a few more people roll in here. I believe I saw Miss Colonel Giggles coming in. Hello to you, my dear. And then Mr. Brown. It says he just sold his neighbor's dog for more Pulse Chain. What kind of dog was it, bro? If it was a Yorkie, you probably made off like at least $1,000 or something like that. Especially if it was a purebred Yorkies, those things are or like a Frenchie, those things are expensive, man. My or an English bulldog. One of my good friends, he had to drive all the way to Mexico and paid like $2,000 for his English bulldog.
He said dry powder. Do you think he could have meant sand to put under his tent to make it more comfortable?
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't put. I mean, like you got to be comfortable, right? Like sleeping on the gravel can't be, it can't be too comfortable. But I'm pretty sure Farmer Brown has the setup down pat because he's been a tent under the bridge dweller for quite for as long as I've known him, at least. So I think he's got a system down. And then let's see here, Mr. Angry Twinkie, good to see you, sir. Oh, Brown again. He says that Brown says that he bought his first incentive when it was 40 cents, bro. That is, what was the low end incentive? Like 33 cents?
Yeah, isn't it the low 30s, I think?
Yeah, dude, that is wild. So if he's just been holding and yielding on that incentive token, bro, my goodness, you are sitting pretty, my friend. You are sitting pretty.
Upgrading to 2-room tent soon.
Oh yeah. What is he going to upgrade to? From a tent to a what?
Well, they have those tents that have multiple rooms, right? Like, so can have like different people sleeping in different rooms, families and things.
Yeah, for the rest of the
homies,
get
a second story on his tent.
It's entirely possible. Back when I was in Washington and you were driving through the various underpasses and the weird like homeless ghettos that were pretty much going on, you could see the people that were like really living large when they actually started adding on to all their pallet crates and tarps. And it's like, why does this person have a legitimate 3-bedroom made out of construction material? It's like, well, it's human ingenuity is what it is. So
yeah, you got to
Farmer J, take a lesson from them. Own that 405.
You got to do what you got to do, man. So yeah, he's gonna upgrade to that premium tent for the homies under the bridge, bro. So, all right. So let's go ahead. Actually, you know what? Do I want to share the last? Let's share the last meme, man. Let's share the last meme. Because we kind of left off on a bearish meme there, so I'm gonna share the last meme here on IG. Give me 1 second here. This one's a good one. Because we know what happens when to the altcoins once Bitcoin starts dumping, but here's what happens to the altcoins when Bitcoin starts pumping. Right? That is a perfect display of what we always talk about in the channel, right? What does the flow of capital do? It goes from Bitcoin and trickles all the way down to the altcoins like a fire hose. That's exactly what's happening there, right? Like a fire hose. All the capital from Bitcoin to altcoins. So, and fall time this year, I think that's exactly where we're gonna be, man. You're gonna like the start of like massive alt season, bro. Ooh, that is gonna be nice. That is going to be very nice. So before we get into the articles, I'm going to go over a little bit of TA for you guys here. For those of you who have been following along in the Telegram chat, who have been seeing my emergency streams, some of this is going to be repetitive material for you. But for the folks that are not in the Telegram, so this is for the YouTube folks, I'm going to go over a little bit of Bitcoin analysis here for you folks. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Okay, so as always, we start over on the macro view, right? You always want to have a good frame of mind as a jumping off point before you get into the degenerate time frame. So we are on the weekly. Sorry, my English isn't so good sometimes. We are on the weekly chart here for Bitcoin. And I mentioned this a few days ago in the chat, right? I told them that, look, yes, we are in a dip, but if Bitcoin manages to close the week, which we just had the weekly close, and Bitcoin close at 69,358, which means we closed above my 2 targets that I spoke about in the chat, right? The first like more bullish target was, look, if Bitcoin manages to close above 69,026, that is going to be a lot more bullish for price, right? Because if you notice, that is where this week closed and then this week opened, right? So that $69,000 level was a very important level for Bitcoin to hold. And if we did not close above 69,000, I said that at the very minimum, if we can close above 67,188, which is where this weekly close was, right? This was the third weekly close of March of this year. If we close above there, it's not super bullish, but at least we would have some cushion for more potential downsides, right? Because if we closed above there, then we have some major horizontal support levels for price to head down to if we do get more dip heading into the week. And we didn't get the bearish scenario of Bitcoin closing below. What was the weekly close here? Of closing below 60. What was this? This was around.
I'm looking at about 67.2 on my chart.
Yeah, exactly. Because that would have basically eliminated any major horizontal supports here in the weekly. And look at where we wicked on this candle, right? We wicked on this candle at about $64,500 for Bitcoin, right? If we would have closed around that level, this would have been a completely engulfing candle of last week's candle, and it would have engulfed the bodies of the last 3 candles of price action, right? So that would have been extremely bearish for price action over the next week if Bitcoin were to close below those levels. But on the bright side, we closed above the most bullish target, at least for me personally, for Bitcoin. So any downside momentum that we are going to have over the next week is going to be fairly muted at least, because we're going to have some major horizontals for price to head down to if we do get more negative price action, right? So that's the action on the weekly. All right, let's go ahead and head. Oh, before I go into my bearish scenarios, right? Because as always, we have to give the bears their due. So we go over both the bullish and the bearish scenarios for Bitcoin. So overall target for this year, I have 3 targets that I'm looking out for this year, right? If you take a fib retracement from your last all-time high, that last 69,000 all-time high to our bear market lows, we have some very important fibs here for price to head up to. My major target, you've heard me spoke about this several times, but for this year, I think Bitcoin has a pretty damn good shot of hitting that $100,000 mark. And if you can see, the 1618 retracement taken from the last all-time high to our bear market low is at 100,000. So $102,630 for Bitcoin, right? That is the 1618 retracement. But let's say we get a not so bullish price action over the rest of this year, which very unlikely. My other 2 targets, which also should be familiar to you because I went over these 2 targets I believe I had an emergency stream on Tuesday. So anywhere between 80 and 90,000 are my 2 other targets, which corresponds to the 1236 and the 1382 fib retracement, right? So these are my bullish targets for Bitcoin for, I think, Q2, and we're going to go over this on our Q2 stream. For Q2, I think Bitcoin certainly has a damn good chance of hitting a minimum of $80,000 and potentially $90,000 for Q2, especially post-halving. But overall, during the rest of this year, I think Bitcoin has a fairly damn good shot of heading into that $100,000 price range. All right, so those are my bullish targets for Bitcoin. Now, bearish targets, we're over here on the daily chart. We are on day 19 of the 60-day cycle. And if you can see, we are just ranging around $69,000 in this area of $65,000. But if you look closely at the structure, this looks like, for those of you who likes to follow chart patterns, this looks like a symmetrical triangle starting to form. Right? So I have 2 scenarios for the Elliott wave patterns for Bitcoin, right? I went over this on that Tuesday stream. I said that this was looking to be like a zigzag. This was a 1, 2. So if we let's go over to the 4-hour chart. All right. This looked like a 5-wave sequence to the downside, right? This was a contracting diagonal, and then this was a 3 wave move to the upside. And then what we're looking now for the next leg down, right? We're looking for another 5-leg sequence to the downside, right? Because that is your subwave counts for your diagonals, right? It's a 5, 3, 5 for that C wave. And our targets, let me just give you folks a refresher. My targets for that zigzag, if you take that fib extension from the start of your A wave to the end to the top of your B wave, my low target for Bitcoin was $58,500, right? That would be the 1-for-1 extension of the entirety of this move, right? Because zigzags have a habit of doing that 1-for-1 extension, which just means that the magnitude of decrease from your A wave, from the start to finish of your A wave, is going to match the magnitude of decrease from the start of your B wave to the end of your C wave, right? So that's why my first target was at $58,500 Bitcoin. However, what this is looking like now, right, because we have more data and this pattern, we've given this pattern some time to play out, this is now starting to look like a symmetrical triangle. Now, the important thing to note about a symmetrical triangle is that every single leg of the triangle has to be a simple zigzag pattern, right? So you can't have a significant amount of time spent consolidating sideways. And what we have here, for the most part, right, you do have something that also looks like a 3-wave structure here, right? So that's a simple zigzag. Here's another ABC. There's another zigzag. That's your third leg of the triangle, right? And you have another. So this is your ABC. That's your B wave. Let me actually draw this out. All right. So you have your A, B, the finish, right? C. And now we're looking for a D wave to finish, and it looks like it has, right? And then your C wave probably going to touch this bottom trend line here before continuation of trend upwards, right? And so far, this has met the requirements of a triangle structure, right? You have a 1, 2, 3 down here, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, another 1, 2, 3 downwards here, right? And then this is looking to be the end of our D wave, which is another 1, 2, 3 to the upside, right? Getting rejection here at this $70,000 level, right? So what you're looking for on the E wave is another 1, 2, 3 to the downside. So if you guys want to watch this pattern play out on your charts, then go ahead and draw your trend lines. And if price bounces on this trend line, right, then you can have a pretty good bet that we are going to get continuation to the upside. Right?
Is that when you get the 5-wave sequence that starts going up?
Yes, right? Because from the looks of things, this is also, so if this is your A wave right here, and this is actually not a triangle, what this looks like is a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 to the upside, right? So that scenario can also play out. But this is looking more like a triangle structure. So look for your E wave to terminate at some point and make contact with this trend line before continuation of trend to the upside, right? So you're also looking for a simple 3-wave structure to the downside, right? Another simple zigzag pattern to the downside, bouncing on this trend line before continuation to the upside, right? So that would put price at around $60,000, give or take some change, before we continue trend to the upside. And validation of this pattern is if we take this local low here. What is the low of this candle? All right, so the low of this candle is 64,511, right? If we make a low past that $64,000 price point, right, then that would invalidate this triangle, right? But if we make contact with this trend line and then bounce strongly to the upside, then we have continuation of trend. All right. And then on the daily, let me go ahead and remove the drawings here. I think that's a very high likelihood of occurring because if you go back here on the daily chart, we turn on our Bollinger Bands, you notice that on the daily, Bitcoin has now recovered the 20-day moving average. Very good for price, very good for the alts. and we are closing once again consecutive days above there, right? We have now closed 4 days consecutively above Bitcoin's 20-day moving average. So that is a good sign for price heading into the upside, right? So over the next week, this is a very important trend line to keep an eye on. If Bitcoin makes contact with that trend line and goes back to the upside and then breaks through this upper trend line right here, then I'm going to be more convinced that we have continuation of trend to the upside, especially once we take the local high here, the local high of 71,754. Okay, and like Brendan says in his analysis, in his tagline, we're about 13 days away from the halving, right? So most analysts believe that the halving occurs around 420, 421. So yeah, guys, we are less than 2 weeks away from the halving. That's all I had for you folks in terms of Bitcoin. I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to our panel, see if they have anything else to add.
I do. Bitcoin halving is going to be on 420. I don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. But currently they're thinking that, right around 420, 421, that we might have the Bitcoin happening. Can someone please explain to me how it's possible that the Bitcoin happening happens on 420? Coincidence? I think not. Freaking degens, bro.
Look, sometimes these things just magically work out. But you mentioned this earlier, which is that now that we're getting closer to the actual date, it's like that it's been funneling towards this area. And if you've been watching the Bitcoin halving countdowns, it's been fluctuating anywhere between like the 24th of April to like the 16th of April. And this is all based on the miners and how fast or how quickly they solve those blocks. So is it possible that people try to do a collective effort to get this to happen exactly on 420? Yeah, it's definitely possible, but at the same time, it is technically a decentralized network, so there could be people that don't want that to happen, but, I mean, come on, it's crypto, we're kind of all degens here. Plus, funny number makes for good meme.
Imagine how many meme coins will come out if that actually happens. Bitcoin happening 420, bro. I'm gonna go make that coin on Solana and see what happens.
Where's Crypto Sloth? DRT 420.
DRT 420.
Oh, we got a comment here from Paul Sachs. He's hoping for the opposite. So instead of the wedge, that triangle wedge pattern breaking to the upside, which is likely to happen, he's hoping for it to break to the downside and reset all of the leverage plays. Now that's certainly a possibility, right? You can, like all of those, like the open interest is still fairly high for Bitcoin, so there's a lot of leverage going on in the market. So yeah, there's certainly a potential for the halving to become a sell the news event and for people to just get liquidated. But I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on the miner news, Paul. Here's the thing, right? Here's the reason why taking a look at the on-chain data is pretty important when you want to see exactly what's going on in the market, is because a lot of the news over I think the entirety of March and a fair amount of the news that was being circulated in February about the Bitcoin miners in particular is that they were like selling the price down of Bitcoin. Right. And so there was this fear in the market that the miners were going to sell down the price of Bitcoin all the way into the halving, right? Like basically taking advantage of the pump during the halving to lock in some profits. But when you take a look at the on-chain data, most of the very large miners, who are the largest miners in Bitcoin? I believe I got their names here.
I know Marathon's number one.
Yeah, Marathon is number one, and Riot, I think, is number two. Marathon is number one, and they have quadrupled their Bitcoin holdings over the past few years. Marathon is sitting at about 16,000 Bitcoin right now, with Riot in second place at 8,000, right? And then the on-chain data reflects that they are holding steady on the majority of the Bitcoin, and then the sell-off is actually, only happening from a small handful of like offshore miners and things of that nature, right? So when you take a look at the on-chain data was from an analyst from Crypto Quant, so they're pretty reliable when it comes to their information. So according to them, the on-chain data reflects that at least the largest of the Bitcoin miners are holding steady, right? They're hodling their Bitcoin. So I think I'm more in the camp of the wedge breaking to the upside, but Could it break the downside? We'll get to that bridge when we get there. Once the rest of that pattern plays out. But
you know what's interesting is a lot of people have been talking about Bitcoin, and maybe I'll save this for our next article. You know what? I'm going to save this thought.
Fair enough. Before we get too far from the TA point, I did have a little something to share.
Go ahead, sir.
I arrived at my analysis separate from Jay, but it's kind of funny how we both came to a very similar conclusion, which is that looking at some of the basic trend lines, looking at momentum specifically, when we had our cycle low here back in January and then tracking it all the way out, we had confirmation here around the 5th of February. And then we also have that other half of the trend line up here at about the 65,000 low. And then additionally, if you look up at the top and then we go, instead of that symmetrical triangle pattern that you were talking about previously, what I actually came up with myself was more of a pennant pattern, which is more the bullish pennant. What I mean by that is that we've been riding this upside for a long time, and now we're getting this area of consolidation. And what's going to happen, in my opinion, is we could see this sort of like squeeze between a support and resistance, and then there's a decent chance that we can break out to the upside. If you want to add another factor into this, which is time, which is that we're on day 19 of the cycle. If we get a perfectly balanced cycle, theoretically, that would mean that our cycle high is about at the midpoint, or maybe a little before or after. And with the halving coming up on April 20th, allegedly, that would make
day
sense
30.
in my mind. Or yeah, exactly. So why we get that day 30, I think. Look at that, 31 days right on the halving. If it happens on 420, I'm not saying it could just be coincidence that this stuff is happening, but when you start combining multiple factors, it looks like this stuff might actually might not just be fairy dust. Where it's like,
Zenith, do you have a crystal ball over here? Are you showing us your crystal ball?
Not quite. My crystal ball previously was hoping that we were going to get a bit of a right translated cycle after hitting that all-time high. What I originally was hoping was going to happen was that we were going to extend towards something like that and actually get a new confirmation of a cycle low. However, when we did kind of stay above this 20-day moving average, the moving averages, as a reminder, are kind of that indicator for momentum, whether it's short, medium, or long term.
They're pivot points.
Exactly. I also have my daily moving averages at 20, 50, 111, and 140. And we've been well above this 50-day moving average, and we've been even just so much higher than all the other averages as well, which shows that the momentum right now is very much in the bullish direction. So with everything going on, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that we actually went up towards that 80K, maybe even the 90K mark that Jay was talking about for the halving.
Yeah. Hey, Zenith, it's official. You are the DGen Roundtable's bear.
I'm not the bear. I was just hoping for good prices because, my God, I may have made a large DCA around this point right here. So, I'm not a bear because I was looking at this one and I was like, oh, cool. We have like 3 consecutive days of a close above $70,000. We're probably going to 80K, and then it immediately went the other direction. So, if that's bearish, I'll take that with what it is. But I mean, Jay, I don't know if you've touched on it yet, but the Bitcoin chart looks slightly different to me compared to the Ethereum chart. And it's specifically around that 20-day moving average thing. Because if we look at this one, it looks like we're starting to grind above and move past our 20-day moving average on Bitcoin. But Ethereum is actually using the 20-day moving average as kind of a resistance level that we haven't moved above. We've had like a few wicks or a daily close or two, but we immediately dove right back below it. And we've actually had the 20-day drop below the 50-day moving average, which means in my mind, Ethereum at least, is starting to show on the very short term that the momentum is more down than up right now. But the overall like long-term view is that we are still very much up for Ethereum.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we spoke about this earlier, right? Bitcoin is always going to be the first mover. So when it recovers, it's going to recover first. It's probably going to recover those key moving averages first. And then the alts, Ethereum and others are going to follow. So if Bitcoin continues the momentum heading into next week, then I expect Ethereum to start recovering and closing above that 20-day moving average, fairly soon. But, for the meantime, it's Bitcoin is going to move first. So, but as long as Bitcoin stays above the 20-day moving average, then the rest of the market is going to follow, right? So the next week is actually going to be very important to pay attention to in terms of where price heads down, because that is probably going to determine where we're going to head for the remainder of the cycle, right? So
you're not wrong. I think one of the interesting points that I have for where we are right now in the cycle is that Bitcoin has been leading, and the rest of the coins have been following, but that's more of just to the direction and not exactly the magnitude of those moves. Because if you look at the charts, we are above all-time highs for Bitcoin right now to this day. Whereas it comes to Ethereum, we got close, like we got within about like 15-20%, but we are still well below all-time highs, which means that like the outside market forces with everything going on with the ETFs has actually moved this asset that we thought was going to be the more diminishing returns over time is actually been outperforming the market to a good degree. And this is sorry, that's not the chart I want, but the professor brought up a chart previously and threw out an idea as well, which is that when you look at the dominance chart, look at the dominance chart on the macro scale. Take it off logarithmic. We start to see that like we're reaching this point where theoretically Bitcoin should be starting to drop. But we've also been talking about this whole time is how it feels like an altcoin season might possibly be at its end. And if the altcoin season is at its end, then that means that Bitcoin dominance is going to be going up, which would be a bit of a change of the trend when you look at the dominance chart without the logarithmic portion on.
Well, I mean, most analysts are probably going to, like, if you take a look at Ben Cohen's analysis, he's probably going to agree with you that dominance is going to break to the upside, right? Because like the dominance chart is actually, it's kind of looking like a descending triangle pattern, but if it's going to break to the upside, it would make sense that it does it within the next few weeks, precisely because the halving is occurring within the next 2 weeks, right? So you'd expect Bitcoin to start taking over a larger portion of the market share when it comes to dominance within the entire space. So, I mean, it makes sense. Like technically it makes sense, especially when you line it up with key events that's going to be occurring within the next few weeks. So like, I would agree with you there, bro. You know,
I hear that. I just look at something like this and it is kind of one of those counterpoints that I really need to chew on more, because based on what I talked about for the previous two charts, everything there makes sense within each other. But then when I zoom out and look at this kind of thing, it makes me wonder if the narrative I just spun for the other ones is actually going to hold or not.
Yeah. Well, consider this too, bro. Like when you had your Bitcoin chart up, a lot of people would recognize that like bullish flag starting to form, right? Usually a bullish flag is it's a decent, like that triangle up there, instead of being symmetrical, a bullish flag is classically a descending triangle, right? You're going to get higher lows, but the support at the base is going to remain consistent. So this is kind of like a variation of the bull flag. You got a parabolic move up, you get some consolidation sideways before continuation of trend, right? So I mean, you could see the pole of the flag, like right there. Like look how parabolic that move is, bro. Right? So that's
I see that for sure.
Yeah, there you go. So there's your bull flag right there. So all of these, like I know, right? This is
some deep TA right here.
There's a deep TA right here. Some astrology TA right here. But it like there's a lot of things kind of lining up on top of each other, right? A lot of variables starting to like call that a confluence of variables, telling us that heading into the halving, Bitcoin is like probably going to take over a larger percentage of the market share when it comes to dominance. So
I hear that. And then shout out to Paul Sachs from earlier. He was talking about the potential for a dip at the end of the halving. But in my mind, this is, again, more deep TA stuff here, which is that if we did see more of a trend correction, aka a reversal, I would be expecting more of a head and shoulders pattern, which is something like this, where we actually like bounce once, bounce twice, bounce third times, and then head the other direction. But that's just not the case, because this high here didn't set a new higher than the last one, which means that Jay and I are thinking more along the lines of that like flag or pennant idea, as opposed to an actual trend reversion through something like a head and shoulders pattern. So would we love cheaper Bitcoin prices? Absolutely. Do we think we're going to get them?
Yeah.
Probably
bro,
not.
Here's the thing that you guys, so here's one thing that I'm paying attention to very closely. Up until now, every single new high that we've had on the weekly has been matched with significant volume. Like the highs are up and to the right, the volume is up and to the right. If we get a high and get rejected and that volume candle on the weekly is shit, get ready for lower prices. That's like, if you want lower prices, pay attention to the weekly volume on the chart. If we do break past the current all-time high and get swiftly rejected, right? I'm keeping a close eye on the volume candle on the weekly, right? Because up until now, the volume is up and to the right, the same way that the price is up and to the right? So there's no divergence yet on the volume in the weekly. So I'm taking a close eye on that.
Gosh, just even looking at the weekly chart, the RSI is still just absolutely through the roof right now.
Yeah.
It's so high.
Yep. just like Farmer Jay.
Hey.
So
Love you,
I
Brown.
wonder, do you think it's possible then that this upwards movement continues on throughout the summertime, and then say right around let's say August, September, and then into October, it's a big crash? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, traditionally, the Santa rally, bro, price tends to go up during the holiday. So, I mean,
Well, that's the thing.
off the
Then right
noggin,
around
that's
November,
something.
December, it shoots up
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see a crash, more of just chopping sideways or like slightly grinding on the downwards trend over time.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've gotten really high really fast, and we've all know this. However, at the same time,
Like
there's no
Farmer Jay.
indication. Exactly, just like Farmer Jay.
Yeah,
But just
I
like
wasn't
Farmer
gonna
Jay,
say it, Brendan.
there's no indication of stopping anytime soon. So
Yeah,
So,
because I don't know, in the private chat, if you guys want to have a look at it, me and Brendan are basically telling the future over here. But yeah.
Well, that's all we had for you guys for TA. Let's go ahead and transition to the very first article that we wanted to cover with you folks here today. Bean had something to share. This is a question that he's going to posit on us, obviously, and then the rest of the chat. But this article in particular was very interesting because it goes over if it asks the question, if the ETFs and the bullish momentum that ETF has given Bitcoin, has that muted the potential pump that the halving is going to give price? So go ahead and share us your article there, Mr. Bean.
All right, let me share this. You know,
This was
it's
such a
interesting.
good question. It was a great question because I've been very confused as to like, when is it going to drop? Because it's always done this, you know, and in what it's like the only excuse I have right now of like, oh, it just keeps going up, just keeps strong, is because of the ETFs. It's literally it.
Let me know when you can see that. And pull up my screen.
Got it, sir.
Honestly, I think this is a really great question because we've been talking about how different this cycle is or has been from previous cycles. You know, hitting a new all-time high before the halving, it's kind of unprecedented. And yet the 4-year cycle, if you just look at the charts, seems to be intact. Like we aren't really deviating from the 4-year cycle, even though we've kind of sort of gone up much higher and faster than maybe we had originally anticipated. I don't think many people, a year ago thought we might hit new all-time highs prior to the halving. But as we were, starting to see things coming in, as we started to see the ETF and how we started to see the institutional money come into the market, we started to see that happen a lot faster. And so the question is, did we just essentially take away the bullishness of the halving? Like, did we speed that up as well? And so we took that money that would normally come in post-halving and we just put it in pre-halving to the ETFs. And so do you guys think, in chat, really interested to hear what you guys think as well, did strong Bitcoin ETF demand kill the halving's potential for a bullish rally? I know we just looked at some charts, so you can take that into consideration as well. But Jay, what are you thinking?
Well, most people will know my stance on this, right? I am currently I'm leaning more to the bullish scenario, and bullish scenario because overall I don't see any significant macro headwinds coming down on price in the near future, right? The thing, SBF's trial has just been settled. Coinbase is engaged in obviously what is going to be a fairly extended legal battle with the SEC. But for those of you who've been paying attention closely to the case, they just won a portion of that litigation. And when it comes to Coinbase wallet, because the SEC accused Coinbase of being an unregistered broker when it comes to the Coinbase wallet, the judge threw that out. And so I think that there isn't really a ton of headwinds over the near future. For those of you who've been keeping up with all of the litigation involving the SEC, they've just been kind of taking L's left and right. They haven't had a significant win to speak of within the past year or so. And obviously the Fed And the hawkishness of Jay Powell during the last meeting might serve as some headwind, right? But it's like, yeah, we're also heading into the election cycle, right? And so the money printer has already turned on. If Jerome Powell wants a seat at the table, it wants to keep his job, he's like he can't be too hawkish, right? And he's going to capitulate at some point in time, right? And so I don't see any significant headwinds over the next few months for crypto. But obviously we have to evaluate the data as they come in, right? All institutions are bullish in crypto, besides like a few like RP, Vanguard. Entire nations are bullish crypto. And Argentina's like, yeah, we're gonna buy 1 Bitcoin every single day. Yo, I'm dead, bro. Argentina says we're gonna buy 1 Bitcoin every day, and you got Mr. 100 over here buying an average of 100 Bitcoin every single day, more if it dips. So this guy is buying more Bitcoin than the entire fucking country. Man, but kudos to Argentina, bro. I just thought that was like that juxtaposition was so hilarious. But who knows? Maybe Mr. 100 is a country. He's not an individual person. So, but I just thought that was hilarious. Imagine like one person buying 100 Bitcoin a day, a whole country just buying 1 Bitcoin a day. but yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
I wonder something. So what would, like, if let's pretend that there's a world where maybe there's an elite group of people who tend to just kind of run the world, like World Economic Forum style, and you know, the Fed happens to be kind of a part of that. And then you have this particular very popular person who more than likely is going to end up winning the presidential election in the United States, the most powerful country in the world. Generally, the reason for the Fed having to print again is going to be to, you know, make things look good for that president. But if they wanted to make a president look bad, maybe things don't go the way that, you know, maybe the Fed just doesn't, you know, help out. So I wonder if there's a possibility that, especially since it kind of seems like the Fed is in a little bit of a bind where they can't necessarily start dropping rates, but they also, you know, they also don't want to like just drop everything and then start printing like wild dogs and able to make the economy look great. I wonder if instead they'll just say, screw it. We're going to hold the position we're in now, kind of in the whole recession, and then be like, yeah, by the way, it's that president's fault. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't vote for that guy. I don't know. Just kind of speculation there. What's your thoughts on that? A possibility of that?
Well, so in regards to holding their position, that would be fairly congruent with how JP has been over the past few meetings. He says, if necessary, we're holding the stance of higher for longer. So if they held that position, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it would surprise anybody because, like I said, it's fairly congruent with how he's been speaking throughout the past few meetings. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, you mean like to just screw over the incumbent? I don't know if that's gonna happen. I think he wants a job. Or maybe who knows? Maybe he's like, I'm too old for this shit. I'm just like, okay, like screw you guys. I don't know, man.
I'll just say that Jay Powell's been pretty middle of the road. I mean, everything that he says, he's been pretty honest about, and sometimes you have to read between the lines. But I don't think he's choosing sides here. I honestly think at the beginning I was really critical of him because of, you know, his terms like transitory inflation and taking too long to raise rates. And, you know, he was kind of newer to the position and he didn't do a great job in the beginning. But since then, I think he's actually held his ground pretty strong when, you know, people have kind of seemingly maybe started to pressure him in the background to reduce rates, you know, to start cutting interest rates a bit more. But he has not, you know, bent to that pressure in ways that I thought he might. And so I've actually gained a bit more respect for him as his job in his chair position has gone on. What do you think, Zenith?
I think that Jerome Powell, if you listen
I think
to
you need your tinfoil hat, Z.
If you listen to the language, I think that he's been pulling back a little bit. What I mean by that is when we had December and January, we got the sound bites of talking about 3 decreases throughout 2024. People were banking on possibly March. Obviously, we're well into April at this point. We've had 0 rate drops. This narrative along that time has been that the numbers they've been looking at for the economic indicators have not been coming back with what they wanted to see. I mean, inflation, I don't think, operates on chart principles. However, at the same time, if you look at this, we had our lowest year-over-year inflation back in June of 2023, which came in at 3.0%. Since then, we've gone all the way up to about 3.8, and we bounced down to about 3.2, 3.1. So this is obviously not that 2% number, which they keep hammering over and over, but we're just not there yet. And on top of that, Jerome Powell is talking about how the unemployment numbers are slowly starting to creep up a little bit. Previously, we were like 3.7, 3.8. Now with this last report, we were at 3.9%. So it's very possible that we do still get rate cuts through this year due to political pressures on the Fed, which, I mean, theoretically is an independent branch of, or not a branch of the government, but an organ of the government that controls this thing, which arguably it should not be controlling, but that's neither here nor there, or in a 2-hour conversation for another day. But the point is this, which is that Jerome Powell, it's ideally he is immune to political pressure. Realistically, he's not. And like Nate was saying, like the guy wants a job, and that's understandable because you can kind of count on humans to be self-interested or be bribed, as our good friend Fast Abdul likes to talk about. Exactly. So if we continue to see similar numbers, I honestly think that we're probably not going to get a rate cut either this time or the next time. I mean, if you go look at the FedWatch tool, I think we're at 92% chance of staying where we are for this next one. And then the meeting after that is the first one where a rate drop actually becomes the most probable solution or option. But it's kind of a weird thing because we only have 4 more Fed meetings before the election, because the 5th Fed meeting is on November 7th and the election is on November 5th. So if you believe the political pressure narrative, then that means that theoretically we could be getting 2 rate drops, not this time, but the one in June and then the one in August or September, I believe. So it's like there is possible Fed pressure, but at the same time, I think the Fed has actually been paying attention to the numbers a little bit more than we give them credit for sometimes. And they've actually been willing to adjust their own estimates, and they're not willing to just drop rates because they want to drop rates. One of the best questions that got asked in the last press meeting for the FOMC was that one of the reporters was like, hey, I looked at this thing you guys put out. You actually adjusted your numbers up, saying that you wanted interest rates to be higher for a little bit longer. It's still a little bit, but it's still an increase, which is weird. And he's like, oh, yeah, you caught that, huh?
Well, I mean, that's what you want, right? You want them to pivot in the face of new data, because you don't want them just dropping rates just because, like, yeah, we said we were expecting 3 rate drops and we're going to do it because we said it, right? Brendan alluded to this earlier, but one of the things that I do like about Jerome Powell is because that he's very careful with his language, right? You will notice this when you listen to the press conference, when people are asking him questions, the reporters, because they're being reporters, have a tendency to, you said X, and JP's like, no. This is what I said. This is how you interpreted it, but this is what I said. Okay. And then here's my answer to your question. Like, he's always very quick to correct them on things that he says, because he doesn't want these people getting sound bites out of him, right? So he's very careful. And yeah, are people going to be upset that he's like fairly conservative when it comes to monetary policy? I'm like, well, it's easy to say that when you're Monday morning quarterbacking, right? But you're not in the fucking chair, right? You're not handling monetary policy for a country, number one, with over 300 million people. So, like, just, bro, like, chill the hell out. Okay. Right.
Jerome Powell is about one of the straightest shooters you're going to get when it comes to government officials. And he's always been very good about pretty much sticking to what he says. Even when he does kind of sometimes let out a little too much information, it's typically the correct information or what he's talked about previously. I mean, we do got to give the guy some leeway here because his job is to primarily operate behind closed doors. But when he does come in front of the cameras, he's honestly the best you're going to get from a government official.
Yeah. And one other thing, and actually Paul Sachs brings up the point that I was going to say. Zenith talked about the unemployment rate ticking up, but if you believe these numbers, the government seems to use them. So it doesn't matter if we believe that they're accurate or not. but we added the most jobs, 303,000 in theory, in March. That would be the most jobs that we've created since like January 2023. I think there was one other time where we hit the 303,000 mark, but also back in 2023. So if these numbers are accurate, in the last few months haven't been much different or much lower than that. They seem to be adding a lot of jobs to the economy. And again, that doesn't mean that I agree that these numbers are accurate or not. I'm just taking numbers that I think that the Fed uses to make their decisions and saying, well, it's making me think that we might not get as many rate cuts as we had originally anticipated. In fact, I said this in our chat this week, that wouldn't it be interesting if we only got one rate cut this year?
Yeah.
Could there be a possibility where they don't cut rates because A, the job market stays strong, B, the economy is thriving, but yet they're having this sticky inflation? This is like a weird perfect storm. They don't want that stagflation, as Chocolate Taint talks a lot about in the 70s. They're very worried about that as well. So I don't know. I'm starting to think this could be a pretty interesting year, keeping rates a lot higher than even they had anticipated originally, and then, still have a strong economy and strong job market. It would be odd, but it's the struggle to get inflation down. Because if you keep printing money, which we know the Fed's doing, if we keep adding trillions of dollars to our deficits, it's very, very hard with the limited tools that the Fed has to bring inflation down. It's just, if the government continues to raise how much money the debt ceiling and how much money they're spending, then raising the interest rates is only going to do so much. They have very limited tools. And so if the government isn't being fiscally responsible, and in fact, if they're being 100% irresponsible from a monetary policy standpoint, then the Fed's screwed anyway.
Yeah, and
Brendan, you're entirely correct on this.
They will raise the debt ceiling. They will raise it.
We know they will do that. They will always approve more spending, and they will raise the debt ceiling. But to your point, is it possible to get one decrease before the end of this year? It's absolutely possible. An alternate way of looking at this is theoretically, this might not, you can kind of imagine this is not like a year with 8 different Fed meetings, but more of a year with 6 different Fed meetings, because the election in November, as much as I love to put on the tinfoil hat and shit post about it, the reality is that if there, with every 4-year cycle election, it's a possible change in leadership and an entire change in direction. So really, all we can really count on right now is what we know to be certain, which is that Joe Biden is the president until November 5th of 2024, at least until the election happens, and then the inauguration happens in January of 2025. But the point is that one rate cut between now and November seems absolutely doable. And then one of the reasons that they might cut rates is, if you pay attention to the last Fed meeting, is that Jerome Powell said he's watching the unemployment numbers, because we talk a lot about how inflation and interest rates are this binary scale, but it's actually more of a triangle, which is that you have unemployment as that magical third leg that they don't really directly affect, but is another indicator and is something that they care about, because they talk about stable prices, stable job employment, and then trying to keep inflation down. It's that trifecta. It's not just 2.
Yep.
You're adding jobs and increasing people making money. That's more money going into the economy, and therefore causing more inflationary pressure. So less people making money in the market, less inflationary pressure. But if that's offset by irresponsible government spending, then who knows?
Yeah. I totally agree with Z and you, Bean. I think at least one rate cut for sure. But most analysts now, they've gone from the 3 that was originally promised. They're thinking now at least 1, maybe 2, right? Because of how things have played out. So, certainly something to look forward to, right? I mean, everybody's hoping that once the Fed pivots, after we get that dump in price, then things can really start taking off, right? Because then the money printers really start running. So, but we'll see, man.
Jay, before we hop to the next question, I didn't get to give my quick point on that article. So there's 2 things. We talk about this rally that's happened pre-halving, and could that cause us to not gain as much post-halving with that bullish upside? But think about it this way: what's caused this increase in prices so fast? Scarcity in the market. because institutions in countries and large corporations like MicroStrategy, et cetera, are buying a lot of Bitcoin and they don't want to sell it.
No.
So what happens at the halving? Why does the halving affect Bitcoin pricing? Because it reduces the amount of supply, right? Supply shock also reduces, also increases scarcity. So we're now talking about two potential causes in decreasing or increasing the scarcity of the Bitcoins. So what happens there? That actually pushes upward momentum on the market because there's a lot less Bitcoin able to be purchased. And as companies and countries want to hold, that means there's a lot less Bitcoin for people to buy. So I think that this is actually very bullish and doesn't detract from our upside because it's also reducing scarcity, which is actually just pushing the halving to another level of moving the market. So actually, I think this is actually pretty bullish that we've reached new all-time highs pre-halving, because I think halving is in the scarcity that's going to cause is going to increase the price of Bitcoin coming over the next 6 to 12 months or whatever this bull market gives us. But I'm very bullish on it because of what we've seen.
Yeah, and you said that less to buy, right? But you also have to consider that there's less to sell. So, like, if you go from 900 to an average of 450 Bitcoin produced per day, and the amount, so we shared exactly how much was being bought up compared to how much was being mined like a few shows ago. So I don't think that number is going to decrease in terms of the amount of buying. You can make the argument that it's going to increase, but let's assume that the amount of buying stays the same. And now the amount produced per day has been cut in half. You're gonna get price positive momentum on prices regardless, right? Even if you just kept the demand the same, right?
I'll just go ahead and say it this way: the price is gonna fucking skyrocket, Jay.
Yeah. So I my target's a minimum 80,000 Q2. Right, 80 to 90,000 Q2, I think is certainly possible. Right, so
here we go, pump it up. You got to
and
pump
then
it up.
like Falsax says,
you got to pump it up.
Like he comments here about Tether printing another 1 billion. Right, if you pay attention to the amount of money that Tether prints when Tether is minting new USDT, you usually sign a bullishness in the market. All right, so. All right. If there is nothing else on that article, let's go ahead and transition to our two pieces of ultra bullish news here. Well, I don't say ultra bullish, but they're fairly bullish. One is definitely more bullish than the other. So let's go ahead with the just the bullish news. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Here we go. So Genesis purchases $2.1 billion worth of Bitcoin following the GBTC sell-off. So for those of you not familiar with Genesis, we've spoken about them a few times here, right? Genesis is now the bankrupt arm of Barry Silbert's digital currency group, right? They went under during 2022, and with them, they took down the Gemini Earn program of the Winklevoss twins, right? And so they've been engaged in a pretty extensive, like a legal battle and entertaining back and forth on X. If you guys have been following that that exchange between Barry Silbert and the Gemini twins, right? But over the past few months, they have been finally allowed to make some moves in terms of how are they planning to liquidate some of their holdings and actually repay their creditors, right? And this article, the reason why it's bullish is because, well, let's go ahead into the article. So bankrupt crypto lending firm Genesis reportedly offloads about 36 million shares of the GBTC trust to acquire additional Bitcoin in order to repay its creditors, right? When they got approved to liquidate some of those shares, this was early February when GBTC shares were only about 38.50. Now it's worth 58.50 per share, obviously because of the inflows that we have gotten from the ETFs, right? So they made off quite handsomely selling those shares, right? So with the 2.1 billion that they acquired, they bought 32,041 Bitcoin on April 2nd. Now, the reason why that's bullish is because when the courts approved when the courts approved Jesus. What is it? Sorry, it is Genesis. My goodness. I'm thinking of Gemini Earn. But yes, when the courts approved Genesis to start liquidating their holdings, they gave them two options, right? You could either liquidate those shares for cash and then repay your creditors that way, or you could convert the underlying asset into BTC. And what they did, my goodness, my English is not so good today. I'm sorry. But what they decided to do was convert the shares into Bitcoin instead, which means at the very minimum, we can assume that if Genesis is going to convert the shares into Bitcoin instead of turning it into fiat, they are pretty long Bitcoin and long cryptocurrency as a whole, right? Because if I was bearish over the next few months, what I'm going to do if I had to pay somebody back, I just take the damn cash, right? But if I'm bullish on the market as a whole, I would convert it into Bitcoin. Because why? If I have a lot of people to pay back, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to ride the price appreciation up of Bitcoin before I convert it into fiat. Therefore, I have more capital to repay the creditors, right? So this is why this news in particular, I'm thinking like, okay, this is like super bullish for the market, right? Because Genesis, instead of converting it into fiat, converts it into Bitcoin in order to ride their price appreciation upwards, because they think that the market is going to head up into the right? Which is obviously my bias as well. And then one thing that the author wanted to bring to our attention is that the purchase came after the Coinbase statement. I think this was around early April. That so Coinbase, after the big GBTC sell-off, they assured I'm actually going to quote them right here. They assured the community that the sell-off was not expected to have a wider impact in the crypto market. Quote, our view is that much of these funds will likely remain with the crypto ecosystem, contributing to a neutral overall effect in the market. So, and that was following the purchase of Genesis was following the statement by Coinbase, right? So obviously a lot of that is speculation, right? And obviously that's a lot of speculation on the folks over at Genesis thinking that the market is going to go up. But overall, this is going to be bullish news for the crypto space, because instead of just converting it to cash, they decided to convert it to Bitcoin, right? So a little bit of a subjective interpretation there, but those are my thoughts on it. Panel, can I get your thoughts on this article in particular?
So this one, it seems like in my opinion, it seems like a bit of a both sides of the aisle kind of article, which is that yes, Genesis did go bankrupt and they are trying to pay people back in what they already had. But at the same time, like you talked about, there's this like, it's kind of a sneaky subconscious thing, which is that the article talks about how by doing it this way, they imagine that a good percentage more of that liquidity or that value is going to stay in the crypto ecosystem, because theoretically if you pay someone back in cash, you now have cash in your hand, and it's easier to look at cash in your hand and be like, oh cool, I can do so many different things with this cash. Like I can pay like some of the house mortgage, I can pay off the car, I could do some taxes, I could do like the college loans or whatever. Or they hand you Bitcoin and you look at that Bitcoin and you go, I am never going to frickin' sell this thing, we are going to the moon, which means that stays in the system. So in reality, this is, like you said, this is that bullish news, which is that this is money that theoretically could have exited elsewhere. Granted, people are still very much free to do with their money whatever they would like, but it's that little like psychological trick, which is that, hey, we paid you back in Bitcoin. Do with it what you want. You can take it out if you want, or you can let it ride. Yeah. So, I mean, me personally, I know which one I would go with, but at the same time, what you're talking about, price appreciation is already kicking in, because the article says like, because they're doing it this way, just because of the normal price fluctuation that's happened, the amount that they're paying out is technically more than they even owed people in the first place, because it's just going up.
Yeah. Hey, this is actually, so if you guys go ahead and read that article, at the very bottom there, there was actually a little part about Genesis telling their, I guess telling this interviewer that they were planning to pay over what they owed to their creditors. Whether it actually transpires or not, who freaking knows? I don't know, but it's certainly a lot better than what FTX was promoting, right? You guys know my feelings on that, telling them that, yeah, we're going to pay them in cash the value of their assets when it was in 2022. And you guys know exactly how my feeling on that was. So how about you, Brendan, Nate? Any thoughts on this particular article?
I mean, look, you guys know that I got screwed a bit in the Voyager debacle, and partially because I don't know if people know this, but in Voyager, some coins weren't set up to be able to transfer off platform. So like I couldn't transfer, I couldn't self-custody all my tokens. I didn't know what I was doing well enough. Well, I knew well enough what I was doing, but I could have been a bit smarter about how I went about it. Like, for example, like I couldn't transfer Solana off Voyager. So I kind of just got screwed on that. But these people, if they're we got our payout right in the bear market, which was the worst time because we got the smallest amount of money possible. These people, like you said, could be made whole, and that could be a lucky outcome, and I hope it is. If they're made whole and they get paid in Bitcoin, I hope that they keep it in the market and they learn that self-custody is so important. You have to custody your own coins. I hope it doesn't just scare them out of the market, but it just makes them smarter. Because that's what the mistakes that's happened to me in crypto. It didn't make me less bullish in crypto. It just made me realize that I needed to be a bit more. I need a different perspective on how I work the market and how I self custody and keep track of my own wealth. And so if anyone's listening or anybody there, I think it's as bullish of an outcome as we could possibly hope. Like you said, if they paid out in cash, probably less comes back into the market. They pay out in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is what? The news is blowing up about Bitcoin. People are excited to own Bitcoin. And so I think that that's just from a mental standpoint, going to make people, kind of bullish and more likely to hold on to that rather than just, market sell.
So something that, it's something that I've been thinking about for a little bit now is that it seems like for the past, couple of cycles, we've had all these blowups, whether it's like Mt. Gox or freaking FTX, right? And it's like, okay, people have just lost all this money through these exchanges. And now we're starting to hit this point where we have enough institutions coming in where they're trying to control and regulate this stuff, where it's like, hey, you fucked up, you need to pay people back. And there's a lot of institutions doing this now. And the thing that I've been kind of noticing too is that there's a lot of people in the crypto space right now that are getting a lot smarter. So it's like you can see how the evolution of making the mistakes and then learning from it is happening here as far as crypto people go. And now we're hitting this point where we're not really getting new crypto people. We're getting a lot more adoption, but it's a lot more adoptions through traditional means that are not going to be learning this space anyways. So one of the things that I'm kind of working out in my head is like, so what's actually happening here? Like, are we actually getting mass adoption into crypto, or is crypto like separating at this point? You've got your crypto people who actually know what they're doing, like self-custody, blah, 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 and all that crap, right? And then you've got the people who are just like, hey, I'm going to go to a fund manager and say, take care of my money, and then they're not even really in the crypto space at all. They're just kind of like doing their thing with like the blue chips, right? So I'm kind of wondering at this point if the only thing we're doing is the same thing that we've been doing in every single crypto cycle ever, which is basically trying to anticipate what the other crypto guy is going to do and then trying to get out before them, aka liquidity, right? Trying to pull our own liquidity out before they do. And nothing has changed now except that people are smarter now. So now people are trying to anticipate sooner. And so now we need to anticipate sooner. And when you look at these ETFs, I almost wonder, like, because everything is separated, I almost wonder if maybe nothing's really changed.
Well, I think we've had some change, right? It might not seem like it now because the overwhelming majority of the inflows are coming from these large asset managers, right? But you have to realize that in the very beginning, they might just be recommending these to their clients, right? And the estimates went from like, yeah, you know what, we're gonna keep like maybe 1 to 2% of the portfolio into crypto and just Bitcoin, right? If you're into Bitcoin ETF, but for most of these asset managers, they've increased their allocation to like 2 to 5%, right? From like 1 to 2% to like 3 to 5%. That's a lot of money, especially if you're talking to your big investors, right? But obviously, that's going to start trickle down to your more smaller players, right? People within
that right there.
like,
What you just said right there is what I'm questioning. Even though there's a lot of money, right, that's inflowing into the crypto space, how much of that is going to adventure out into like things that we're doing, you know, with the lower cap stuff, right?
I
How
think
much?
a significant portion of it will. I
You
think a
think?
significant portion. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because if look, we went over the grayscale CEO, Mr. Sunshine, Mr. Sunshine, right? And how he was talking about when he was on Squawk Box on CNBC, and he was talking about, look, our clients have now experienced the massive gains in just Bitcoin, for God's sakes, right? It was like a 40%, more than a 40% gain from the beginning of this year once the ETFs launched. So they got a piece of what that's like. And now they're asking us what's next. And he was there specifically talking about the ETH ETF. And then he was also speaking about how his clients are now asking, where else do we allocate some capital, right? They're taking a sector-based approach to their investments. I don't think that's isolated to Bitcoin. Or sorry, I don't think that's isolated to Grayscale. I think that kind of thinking is going to trickle down onto all of these other asset managers if it hasn't already, right? And like what I was mentioning earlier, you know, eventually they're going to start speaking to their more traditional, like smaller players, right? The people who are investing, who are like what's it called, like middle class Americans, upper middle class Americans. They're going to start trickling downwards to those people. And so yes, is it going to happen at the rate we wanted to? Probably not. But you could bet that a significant amount of the inflows is going to start coming not just from the big investors, but from the smaller investors, from the middle class, upper middle class Americans. And then once they've gotten a taste for what it's like to make those kinds of gains in the market, then they're going to start inquiring about, okay, where else can I invest my money? There's Ethereum, okay. And then they're going to start talking about like, okay, what else is there in DeFi, right?
As far as the wave goes, then okay, so yeah, as far as the wave goes, so the traditional crypto people who would, you know, have already been in Bitcoin are like, okay, well, I'm not going to get in Bitcoin anymore because we have the ETFs. And so the ETFs are almost like this giant wave kind of pushing people a certain direction, in which then they're like, you know what, I'm going to go to Ethereum. Well, how about this? Instead of Ethereum, I'm going to go over to Solana now. Yeah. Right. And now we're seeing what we're seeing on Solana. Yeah. And so now that people like investors are asking Grayscale what's next, that's where that wave that pushes people is now going to head to like Ethereum and then eventually over to Solana. And that continues to push these traditional crypto guys and their normal money that would be allocated to that dominance of like, say, Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that's going to push them to lower and lower caps, basically. And that this is what I mean, though, is like it almost seems like the crypto space is separated, you know, into like the actual crypto guys and then the institutions with the mass adopters, you know.
We might be, but the end goal is the same. The end goal is like massive price appreciation. And look, if I was an asset manager, I would want the majority of the exposure to be Bitcoin first, right? Because I want these people to have a good experience. And look, the good experience to us might be 120, 10, 20, 100x, right? That might be good for us. But you got to realize that a lot of the people coming into this space that exists in traditional finance, a 42% increase within 3 months is crazy to them. Right? And that is massive to them. And so to them, that is a fantastic experience, right? Where the fuck do you get 42% on the S&P 500 in 3 months? That's
NVIDIA.
You get that over 4 years in that kind of market,
right? So for TradFi people, 42% is a fantastic experience. Then it's like, okay, I've gotten a taste for what this market can bring me. Where else can I make more gains, right? And so I think eventually you are going to shift the focus from the low risk, the lower risk asset, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then it's going to start moving downwards to the higher risk asset, right? Like it always does, but it is going to take some time.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying kind of from the beginning, which is like first we get a Bitcoin ETF, then we get an Ethereum ETF, and then we start getting into the realm of like mutual funds where it's like, hey, we're going to take AVAX and Sol and Polygon, and we're going to kind of put them all together. and now it's gonna be like an
Yeah.
index fund type of deal, you know, and things like that.
Which actually transitions perfectly to our next article here. Thank you for that. Thank you for that pivot point, Nate. Here is the more bullish article, right? This one, I really loved reading this one because a lot of people, they know MicroStrategy, they know Grayscale, right? Because these people are almost always on the news. But people tend to forget that there is another company, Pantera Capital, that is all, I think they either were before Grayscale or after, but when I say before, after, like within months, right? Grayscale was established 2013, I believe. Grayscale. Pantera is also was established 2013. They are one of the oldest players in the game. They were the very first ones to establish a crypto only fund, and they're one of the largest crypto only asset managers in the space, right? Currently they are $5.2 billion in assets under management, and they are strictly a crypto only asset manager, right? And so this specific news that I'm going to share with you guys is related to Pantera. So let me go ahead and pull up the article right now. That's a long-winded way of saying that if Pantera Capital starts to make moves, they're probably people that you should be paying attention to, right? Because they are turbo bullish to crypto space. Okay. So, Pantera Capital's crypto fund surges 66% amid market optimism. Article goes on to say that Pantera Capital's liquid token fund, this is one of the funds that I mentioned earlier, reduced its exposure to Bitcoin and Ether in the first quarter of 2024 while increasing their allocation to DeFi tokens. So, Pantera Capital's liquid token fund reportedly posted a 66% return in the first quarter of 2024, driven by investments in crypto tokens such as Solana. According to a shareholder letter reviewed by Bloomberg, the fund's strong performance from January to March was also propelled by assets such as Ribbon Finance and Stacks, while exposure to tokens tied to Bitcoin and Ether decreased during the period. Right? Portfolio manager Cosmo Jiang told Bloomberg the funds has reduced its Bitcoin holdings by more than half since the beginning of the year. Right? And so why is that super bullish in terms of not just Bitcoin, right? Really, but DeFi in general, right? Because here's the thing. They reduced their Bitcoin and Ether holdings in the beginning of Q1. They are now starting to focus more heavily into the DeFi space, right? Into DeFi centric tokens and assets. While a lot of the attention has been on Bitcoin because of the ETFs, folks over at Pantera have now shifted focus into the altcoins, right? Because like I was alluding to earlier in the conversation with Nate, people are going to start allocating funds into areas where they know that the inflow of capital is going to go to, right? Where are we going to get more X's? And now Pantera, because they're a little bit more savvy than the traditional financial asset managers who are only focusing on Bitcoin, they're starting to shift their attention over to the DeFi space. Article goes on to say, launched in 2017, the Pantera Liquid Token Fund holds a pool of 10 to 20 liquid tokens. The fund is designed for accredited investors willing to commit a minimum of $100,000. Yeah, you just have that lying around, right? But primarily targets decentralized finance tokens. Pantera Capital is a $5.2 billion asset manager and an early investor in the crypto space. And this was interesting. The firm recently raised $250 million to buy Solana over the counter, right? And they bought it at a whopping $64, which is 60% below current market price, which is probably what contributed to that 66% gain average in the liquid token fund that Pantera is speaking about here. So I want to share with you guys here a few of the things that Pantera is offering, right? And the reason why the folks at home in particular should be paying attention to this space. Mrs. Producer, I'm going to go ahead and share a different tab here. Let me know if you guys could see this. I am at the Pantera Capital homepage at the moment.
We got you.
Wonderful. So I just wanted to go over exactly a few of the projects and a few of the funds that Pantera Capital offers, right? So they offer a total of 5 different types of funds, right? Some of them like ETFs for Bitcoin, right? And then some are more like a basket, like the S&P 500. We already went over the liquid token fund, which is a basket of 10 to 20 different DeFi projects, right? They mentioned some of the stuff in the article: Ribbon, Stacks, Solana, right? But you also have a few other different types of funds here as well. They have the strictly Bitcoin fund. That's one. They have venture funds and the early stage token funds. So these are specifically focusing on early stage tokens and projects. VC style investing. And then their most recent one, this is interesting, right? The Fund V. This one, I believe, when was this established? I think this was sometime early this year or late last year. This one combines actually the aspects of the liquid token fund, the early stage, and the venture, right? And the breakdown is about 40, 30, 30. So a lot of the capital that's being raised within the Fund V goes into venture capital funds, 30% into early stage tokens, and then another 30% into liquid tokens, right? And so that 10 to 25 different types of DeFi assets. That way, if you're an accredited investor, you get a broad exposure, right? You get some VC in early stage, and then you also get some exposure to the S&P 500 style fund that is the liquid token, right? And the reason why I suggest that you folks pay attention to whenever Pantera makes a move is if we take a look at their portfolio, right? A lot of these projects you are going to be very familiar with. And like I mentioned earlier, Pantera is one of the oldest asset managers when it comes to crypto, right? They've been around since 2013. Some of these names, 1inch, right? Anchor. Let's see. Arbitrum. There's another. We'll go on. Balancer. There's the Balancer fork that you folks in the Pulse Chain ecosystem might be familiar with. BitDAO, Bitstamp, Blockfolio. A lot of you guys use Blockfolio. Brave. Brave has their own wallet. Let's see. What other names? Circle, Coinbase, Cosmos. So like just go down the list. Like just go down the list. A lot of these things, a lot of these different companies, a lot of these different projects, you guys are going to be familiar with, right? And Pantera Capital has been involved in investing in the overwhelming majority of these, right? Injective, there's another one. So, that's a very short, long-winded way to say that Pantera, unlike most other people in the early stages of the bull market, they're very bullish Bitcoin. But Pantera is over here. Yeah, man, we just came out with a fund that is now investing into a lot of early stage VC style tokens and projects. And then now we're also, and then we have the liquid fund that primarily deals in DeFi tokens, right? So these guys are bullish. Now, they were bullish Q1 when everybody was bullish Bitcoin. These guys were bullish Q1 DeFi because they reduced their Bitcoin holdings by 50% to invest into their liquid token fund, right? So definitely one of the bigger players that you guys want to be paying attention in the space. When they make moves, it's probably good that you're paying attention to them. So that's basically the TLDR of the last article that I wanted to share with you guys there. Nate, Brendan, Z, what are your thoughts on Pantera as a whole and the moves that they have been making within DeFi space in general?
I mean, look, I think it's awesome. I mean, they're obviously one of the first people that are in the space, but they're not going to be the last ones. Grayscale's talked a lot more about getting into other coins, to offer more, crypto assets to their customers. Their customers are more interested in branching out from just Bitcoin. So I think there's a lot of interest, in sort of these markets that, no, of course they're in the crypto market, but those are people that aren't self-custodying their own stuff, right? They're buying into funds. They're buying into what these, investment hedge funds are working on. And so those are different customers than maybe you and me and the people in the chat. We're buying our coins and we're holding our own, you know what I mean? So we're about a different type of customer. So I think it's super important for the market to be able to offer all of these different funds. And look, them doing well and outperforming, say, Bitcoin and Bitcoin ETFs, I think that's strong. And I think that that's really bullish, for future opportunity for other people getting into that sector, not just people investing into Pantera, but other potential, hedge funds maybe branching out from just Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs into other types of hedge funds, or maybe we'd love to see, right, more spot ETFs as well. So I think it's bullish. I think everything that's happening within the TradFi and the crypto communities and where they're sort of overlapping, I don't want to become centralized, right? But there's no doubt that we need the money to come into the space if we want to grow it. And so I think it's great. I love what Pantera is doing. And, like you said, they might not be as well known, but they're innovators. They've been there since the earliest days. And who was offering DeFi coins and hedge funds, 10, 20 different coins in a fund since 2017?
Yeah, 2017, bro. So when there was like maybe 10 coins.
Existed.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many of these people in the chat or people watching us were in crypto in 2017? They were already offering sort of a package of coins to their customers. So I think it's great.
Yep. The bottom line here is that this is more people and more money getting deeper into the crypto space. Whether or not it's self-custody, that's a story for a different day. The point here is that this is more exposure, and this is more liquidity, and this is more just asset class of whatever you want getting thrown into our space. This is adoption. We've been asking for this for so long, and we're starting to see it. If anybody out there is unfamiliar with the adoption curve, it's effectively just a bell curve, and I think right now we're still definitely in that like innovators and early adopters phase before like the first half of the general public gets in. And this is one of those indicators for me, which is that this is that large chunk of money. We just had all the Bitcoin ETFs come out, and that's people looking into that very first flag runner, the forerunner, that first layer. And this is diving much, much deeper than that and getting much more involved in the rest of the space. This is adoption, and it's good.
Yeah, bro. Fund V is all new shit, bro. All new shit. Early stage VC investing, right? Venture capital stuff, and then the liquid token protocol, right? Which is 15 to 25 different DeFi coins. All that stuff is not Bitcoin. They have one for Bitcoin. All that stuff is the rest of DeFi. And that's their latest fund. So Nate, did you have any thoughts on this, brother? Nah? Oh, well, on that note, I think we're gonna go ahead and round it off here. Once again, thank you to the chat for joining us on this lovely Sunday evening. Keep an eye on the market and what it's going to do next week. We had a strong weekly close, and so any downside that we're probably going to be muted because we have a lot of support below 69,000. So not as bearish as the bears might want to be. So next week is definitely going to be a very interesting, definitely a very interesting time in the market. So, Brendan, what can the people expect from you over the next few days? What you got planned?
Bro, I'm doing some research. I'm doing some research for the people. If you're in our Telegram chat, we might drop some alpha. But I've been researching for a bit, and Nate kind of put me back on it tonight to research what happens when we start to get rate cuts. And I want to go through, and I've been looking through some of the historical data there. And so maybe in the Telegram this week, or you know what, maybe I'll save it for next Sunday's stream. So if you tune in, you might get some unique alpha. Because if we understand historical aspects of the market, of course, past performance is never indicative of potential future gains. We don't know if it's going to follow those same exact patterns, but it's important to look at it, right? It's important to understand how the markets have worked previously. And there's some really juicy information about market rate cuts and what happens in the next 6 months after that. So definitely going to be doing that. I will probably be on our Wednesday stream. We may have a guest, so I'm not sure if that guest is confirmed. So I'm not going to say who he is. But Wednesday is going to be a great stream, guest or not, because Whiskey Wednesdays are a blast if we don't have any guests on. And also, been playing around with some cool things to bring to the community. So we've been doing a ton of research in the background, and people just see us on stream here on a Sunday or a Wednesday or book club Friday. And maybe you don't see people on stream all the time, but guess what? Working really hard behind the scenes to bring a lot of content to you over the next year. We're not just here to be a YouTube show. We want to be a lot more than that for you. And that starts by being part of our Telegram. Well, you still can for free. It's not always going to be free. We're starting to get a lot more bots in there. We're starting to get a lot more people trying to, join our chat, trying to scam our community. So we need to find ways to protect them. And one of those ways might have to be a small paywall. But maybe if you're in the chat, you might never have to pay that paywall. So can't confirm nor deny because we don't know. But get in while it's free. That is what I want to tell you. And honestly, just super excited about where we're going market-wise. Thanks to all the viewers. And please follow me on X at anonymous_bean. And we will see you guys on the flip side. Nate. What do you got?
Hey, yeah, no, Brendan, you're 100% right. Here's the importance about being in a community like ours, okay? We had, don't know if it's a bot, don't know if it's not, but there's been some people who have been coming in that immediately start trying to shill something. And, we're open, right? And we're like, okay, I mean, we don't want you shilling, but if you're trying to maybe get a good project out there or something, maybe we'll have a look at it, right? And what ends up happening is that our community, on top of us leaders in that community, start clowning on these people because we say, hey, can you give us more details? And then they just say, oh, just buy it. Just go and buy it. And so, yeah, we start clowning on people. And guess what happened? This was just like a week ago. The person came in. We started asking for more details. Please don't be shilling that stuff. I started deleting stuff mid-work. And then all of a sudden, I just banned the fucker because this guy just was nonstop saying, hey, no, you want to buy it. You want to buy this coin. Just go buy it. Don't think about it. Yeah. And Nate the Great ended up watching that coin, and it rugged almost immediately.
Yep. Almost immediately.
Almost immediately. And so our community is so strong that it's not just us on the DGen Roundtable here. It's everybody in that community. Look out for each other, try and help each other, try and prevent each other from feeling the pain of losing that money and getting scammed like that. We all help each other out. So I don't want to say it's the safest place on the planet, right? But as far as the crypto space goes, you're going to want to get in here. Just go ahead and scan that QR code.
Safe space.
It is a very safe space. Because as soon as you drop in there, hey, somebody's telling me about this coin, we all go in and start looking around and be like, yeah, bro, I don't know if you want to get into this, right? Or we even, like, for some of them, it's like, hey, that's actually a good idea. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. That has happened as well, and we've made money off of it. So, yeah, get into our Telegram. This is an important thing for you to do, especially now when things are just kind of like going left and right, new shiny object here and there, right? You don't really know where to go. So, yeah, there's a lot of different opinions in there and a lot of people helping each other out. Again, get into it. Or you can just stay poor too, I mean, if you want to.
Z, how about you, brother? Where can people find you and what you got planned over the horizon? What do we have planned for the next book club?
Well, I'll tell you this much. Like Nate was saying, if you hate money, definitely don't click on the link down there or scan that QR code because it's just too much money. Like, you'll get hit in the face with money. You won't know how to feel about it, and it's not a great time. However, shout out to all 22 people on YouTube and all 85 of you crazy folks over on X for tuning in. 87. Geez, it's going up as we speak. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the next few weeks, as we talked about on this stream previously. If you missed it, go check out the TA section with Jay and myself. We both arrived at very similar points from very different directions, but the answer is still the same, which is that Halving is coming up. If you've had your head in the sand up until this point, big moves are going to be happening soon. Be ready for it so that you know how to capitalize on it. Otherwise, don't join the Telegram, don't make money, and that's okay. I respect it. It's a lifestyle. It's not mine, but we know what we're about around here. Anyways, Specifically, all you people on X, hop over to the YouTube channel. Please give us a like and a subscribe. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. This is something that we never thought we'd really hit this fast, but it's just coming up so fast, and we appreciate everybody throwing us support and love. And I gotta say, this is a wild ride, and it's only gonna get crazier from here. So I am Zenith. You can find me over at Zenith DI on Twitter and Instagram, or you can check out the meme page that I run, which is Hexaco Space Force, or Hex Space Force on Twitter specifically. There was a deep episode of the book club that got released talking about green eggs and ham. Go check it out. But then other than that, this week for book club, I'm thinking, it's not official, but I'm thinking we're going to do the book called Thinking in Bets. It was a recommendation given to us by Walrus. I am going to try and see if I can get a special guest for the show. If not, we'll probably still do it. But at the same time, I've been looking forward to this one for a while. So with that being said, I think I got everything. Jay, am I missing anything?
Well, I was supposed to say one thing, Zenith, before we finish out. You mentioned the people on X. Not every show that we have on YouTube is going to be streamed to X. So please, if you're watching on X, make sure you come to YouTube and you like and subscribe, because you're not always going to be able to watch us on X. We'd love to show everything on X, but we do have some content that we just post to our YouTube channel. And same thing, we post some alpha just to our Telegram chat, where we do live streams, where we do things that happen in the chat right away on emergency basis. And you're not getting that alpha unless you're there. On X, you're not going to get all the alpha unless you're also on the YouTube. So we appreciate everybody. We had between our three platforms, 100 people viewing right now, which is phenomenal. And we just appreciate all of you. So Jay, take us away.
Absolutely. Look, I'm going to reflect everybody's sentiment here. We are so thankful for each and every single one of you, whether you are watching us live or you're going to watch us on the replay, which, we had a last minute super chat from our good friend Sam from with the $10 Canadian, says that he's going to be on the replay gang. We appreciate you, Sam, as always, because we know that time is your most valuable asset, and we do appreciate that you spend some of that time here with us on this wonderful Sunday afternoon, evening. As always, you can find me on X at _P90Hex and on Instagram at agent_J Schroth. Until next time, take care, guys. Bye-bye.